OT. I'm your host, Laura Powers, and I'm so pleased today to be here with Dr. Bruce Lipton. We're here at the International Society for the Study of Subtle Energy Medicine Conference. It's wonderful. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for asking me. I so appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I would love it if you could just share with our audience what is epigenetics, because that is something I only heard about recently, and what I learned just basically blew my mind.
It's interesting because epigenetics is a new understanding of science that will change civilization completely. And let's just start with what people are familiar with called genetic control. This is what people learn in school, conventional understanding that genes control our traits. And this is what I was actually teaching in medical school, genetic control. What does it mean? It means that, well, the genes that you end up with, in some sense, predetermined your life. And then I have to say, well, wait, did I pick the genes that I came with? And I said, well, as far as I know, no, I didn't. And if I don't like my traits, can I change my genes? The answer is no, I can't. So basically, you didn't pick the genes, you can't change the genes, and the genes apparently control our lives. This leads us to an understanding called victimization. I'm a victim of my heredity, that diseases are running in their family, and that if they're in that family, there's a great likelihood that they'll have the genes that are responsible for these diseases, and therefore we look at our lives as somewhat predetermined by the genes that we were born with. So this is the old belief, and again, this is a belief of disempowerment because I have no ability to change these genes according to that belief. In recent years, there's a new understanding, and the name is almost the same, but it's called epigenetic control. Now, genetic control simply means control by genes. But epigenetic control, that little prefix epi, changes the entire world for this simple reason, and it goes like this. Epi means above. So when I say the word epidermis, which is skin, it means the layer above the dermis, epidermis. But now I say epigenetic control. What does that mean? That means control above the genes. This is what we're beginning to find out, is that the way we respond to life, our perceptions of the world that we live in, actually adjusts the genetic readout. Just by the way we look at the world, we can modify each gene in our body to create 30,000 variations from the same gene blueprint.
Wow.
Why is this relevant? I mean, it becomes really relevant because it says, well, what if I come with a healthy gene? And I say, well, that's really good, but if your lifestyle is not very supportive or in harmony with the world around, then you can actually take a healthy gene and cause it to read as a mutant gene. So, for example, we find that less than 10% of cancer is heredity, and that 90% of cancer is due to lifestyle and the responses of how you are living, altering the genetic readout through a process called epigenetics. So not only can you take an unhealthy gene, not only can you take a healthy gene and cause a disease consequence, but it also works the other way as well, which is very interesting, and that is you could have a mutant gene. And by changing your perceptions in response to life, you can influence that mutant gene and make it read as a normal gene. So all of this comes down to a whole new vision, because after explaining to people that they've been victims all their lives, we now have to change the belief system around to let people know that they are personally affecting their genetics via their beliefs, attitudes, emotions, and lifestyle. Why is this important? Because we're not victims of our genes, we are masters of our genes. We can change the genetic readout. And therefore, it unfortunately brings in the concept called responsibility.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to talk about that responsibility, I'll tell you, because it's like, oh no, you know, what happened in the past and all this. And what I really want people to understand is this. The new biology says that we are personally responsible for everything in our lives, that the way we run our lives is adjusting our biology and our genetics to conform to those perceptions. And yet a lot of people, when I tell them, well, the concept then leads to personal responsibility, they immediately go,
oh no,
no, you know, and here's what they use. They use these words, and it's very important. They use the words because then they reviewed their previous life, and they said, I was responsible for that illness, or for that problem, or for all that anxiety. And I go, yes, and then they go, oh no, I can't buy that because that's guilt and victim and shame and blame and all these words.
Right.
And therefore they try to disavow responsibility because they can't own the past.
Right.
And what I want people to understand, very clear point, if you have no knowledge of how something works, then by definition you have no responsibility to make sure it works right. You didn't even know how it worked. So if I never told you how it worked and then you go ahead and do things and then lead to upsetting the system or causing a disease or all these other issues, you can't be blamed for that. You had no idea of how it worked. So the first thing is the past. Without knowledge, we must let go of the concept of what happened in that past when we didn't have the knowledge. And therefore, using words like guilt or shame or blame or victim have no place in the past history. But here comes the difference. Once you learn how it works, now you have personal responsibility. Because going into the future says, well, if I know how it works and I don't pay attention to that, or I just do whatever I want in spite of what I know, that's where the words shame, blame, victim, guilt, now they apply because you already had awareness of it. So there's an important transition period, and it says, we were programmed to be victims. We led to the lives that we have, that in most cases not the best thing that we could ever imagine. And now we're beginning to find out, no, we're not victims of all this, that we are actually creating. And to help us get in there, we have to let go of the past in the sense of holding on to the emotions of it. Doesn't mean throw out the data, but it means don't be emotionally connected to the history, because nobody really knew what they were doing. It's interesting, I wasn't raised in the Christian tradition, but Christ near his last words were, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah, very powerful.
Well, we didn't know what we were doing, and the other people we interacted with in our lives didn't know what they were doing because they didn't have the knowledge either. So what you really have to do is look at the past and say, wow, we didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know, and they didn't know. But from this moment forward, I now take my next step with the power of, I am creating this, and therefore I'm going to be responsible to create what I want out of my life. So this is the breakthrough of epigenetics as compared to the imprisonment of genetics. That's what we used to teach. So what does this mean to the world? We go from victim to master, and that's turning the world upside down.
Wow, I mean, that is so empowering, and I love that 90% is completely within our control in terms of the gene, how they act out.
Absolutely, because right now everybody's always talking, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, and the fact is, no, you're not. You're only a victim of the belief system, not a victim of any other reality than your perceptions. And this becomes critical for us to understand that we must change many of the beliefs we grew up with, because these beliefs were incorrect and are leading us off of the path. As a matter of fact, if you understand the nature of child development, psychologists tell us that up to 70% of our thoughts and programming are negative and disempowering. So basically it says we have been disempowered from one generation to the next generation, not by the genes, but by the beliefs that are propagated in the developmental period of a child, which is especially the fundamental beliefs that we get in the subconscious mind, arise actually from the last stages of in utero development and all the way up through age 6. This is the most fundamental programming period of the subconscious. The significance about this is the programs that are downloaded in the subconscious mind through the first 6 years of life are not our programs. They were downloaded by observing our parents, our family, and our community, and our culture. So the beliefs, the fundamental beliefs that are operating in your subconscious mind are not even yours. They came from other people. And as I said, most of them are limiting and disempowering beliefs in the first place. And then you say, okay, I'm trying to create something wonderful in my life. So I have great visions of what I want. I want to be successful, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, and I want all these wonderful things. And then I go out into my life and I find that it's always trouble to try and get to these things. And then you say, well, again, I must be a victim because obviously I was looking for a great relationship, or I was looking for a wonderful job and I didn't get it, and this is what my intention was, so it's not me that's responsible for the failure of this system. And then immediately we say, then I'm a victim of fate, or I'm a victim of the world, or whatever this is. Well, I want to correct this understanding, because yes, the mind is running our lives, but there are two parts of the mind, the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind is the latest addition of the mind. It's the part we call the prefrontal cortex, which is just behind your forehead. This is the part that houses your personal identity, your source, your spirit. Who you are is different from everybody else. That's the conscious mind. The conscious mind is also not time-bound, meaning if I say, what are you going to do next week? you can come up with an answer, even though next week's not even here. Where did that answer come from? The conscious mind, because it's creative. It can create an answer for something that doesn't even exist yet. So the conscious mind can move into the future. The conscious mind can move into the past and review all the things that you've done already. Or the conscious mind can disconnect from the current moment by solving a problem in your head. You're thinking, oh, I have to pay the bills, I have to take care of the car. You're thinking about all these things. Why is this relevant? It's relevant because the conscious mind, which has our wishes and desires in it, that's what's in it, is most of the time thinking and not being present.
Right.
That leaves us then operating by default from the subconscious mind. That's the function of the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind has no future or past. To the subconscious mind, everything is now. If you learned something when you were 5 years old, to your subconscious mind, I just learned it now.
Right.
Okay? So why is this relevant? And the answer is this. The subconscious mind is fixed in time to allow us to operate while our conscious mind is not fixed and able to wander all over the place. Well, the data now comes out unconsciously. Our conscious mind is wandering sometimes 95% of the time, so that it's only present about 5% of the time. Well, then it says, if you're only present 5% of the time, then you're only creating your life 5% of the time with your wishes and your desires from your personal conscious mind. That means then 95% of the time, the subconscious mind, which is always in the present moment, is taking over the show because your conscious mind is wandering. And then I go, the fundamental programs in your subconscious mind are not yours. They came from other people. So 95% of your life, you're actually creating other people's beliefs and calling it your life, when in fact, it wasn't you at all. And that's why we find the difficulty, because the subconscious beliefs do not have to in any way support the wishes and desires and aspirations of the conscious mind. So basically, we're victims of subconscious programming, and that programming was passed from our parents and family down to us, but they got it from their parents and their family. And so basically, these are beliefs that are passed through a family lineage. And if they're not healthful beliefs, then they carry along with them diseases, such as cancer. Cancer is not living in harmony with the life that we have. Mm-hmm. Well, how am I not living in harmony? And the answer is, well, did you buy the way you live, the characters and behaviors? Are they your behaviors, or are they downloaded from your parents? Well, this is what we're beginning to find, is the disease-causing problems, the behaviors, are almost inevitably behaviors that were passed down through the lineage and not in our conscious wishes and our desires.
And one thing that I find so striking is that if 95% of the time we're using our unconscious mind instead of our conscious mind, and then these things have been programmed before we were aware that the environment and our thoughts are so important, then, you know, it's like important to sort of reset that.
Absolutely. The only way to re-empower your life is to rewrite the limiting programs in your subconscious, because as long as they're playing, by definition, they're limiting.
Right.
Okay? And then you might say, okay, now here comes the hard part. I say, well, wait, I got all that programming from sometime in the last trimester through the first 6 years. I can't remember. I wasn't even really there.
Right.
So what are the programs in my subconscious mind? And all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I have to go to psychoanalysis on that? And I go, no. It's simpler than that. 95% of your life comes from your subconscious programming. So basically, your life is a printout of your subconscious. What does that mean? It means the things that work for you and come easily into your life come easily because you already have programs in your subconscious that support that. And then it turns around, but the things that you struggle with, the things that you work hard on, the things you sweat over to try to get, you sweat and work hard because by definition you have programs in your subconscious that do not support that. So basically you don't have to go back over your history to find who did what to who and what, who said what and where did all this programming come from.
And it doesn't matter ultimately, right?
Ultimately it doesn't matter. You know, it's funny because there's an old statement called "Don't kill the messenger over the message." And why is this important? Because our subconscious programs are messages that are downloaded. And yet, when we do psychoanalysis, what do? We go back and kill the messenger. Yeah, this person said that to me, and now I'm mad at them. I was like, who cares what that person was? What really is important is what program did you end up with? Beating up the messenger doesn't change the program. So ignore the messenger and say, what are the programs? Then I say, well then, good. Look at your life. Look at your life. Why? If it's working, then most certainly you have programs in your subconscious to support that happening.
So how can people reprogram? So I mean, you can realize, I think, by looking at your life, like what is working, what isn't, but how do you actually go through the process of resetting?
Well, let me tell you the things that don't work, because that's where the trouble comes from
Okay.
first, okay?
All right.
The first thing is this: the conscious mind and subconscious mind are two separate entities. They work together, but they're not the same. Relevance? You can become greatly aware in your conscious mind, but it has no effect on the programs in your subconscious mind. It's a different machine. It learns in a different way. The conscious mind is creative. The conscious mind reads a self-help book. The conscious mind is the one that goes to a lecture and learns about something new at the lecture. And you can educate your conscious mind through your personal experiences, an epiphany. And I go, great, my conscious mind can get filled with all this new awareness. And this is where the problem comes from. How come my conscious mind is so filled with all this awareness and my life is still the same stupid life? And the answer is, because you can increase the awareness of the conscious mind by creativity, reading a self-help book. I can read the book. I can give you a test. When you finish reading the book, I'll give you a test, and I say, oh, you got 100. Laura, you got 100 on this test. That means you have all this information. You say, yeah, but my life is still the same. And the issue is why? Because reading the book enhances the knowledge of the conscious mind, because that's how it can learn. But the subconscious mind doesn't learn that way. And as a result, you can read all the books in the world, you still didn't change the subconscious program. The subconscious learns in two primary ways, and then I'll give a third. The two primary ways the subconscious mind works, number one, is habit. That's why we call it the habit mind. How do you make a habit? You religiously repeat something over and over again with an intention of repeating it. In other words, you wanted to learn the ABCs as a kid.
You just repeat it.
You had to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and at some point now it's a program. Now you got it. You don't have to do it again. Driving a car. You had to be very conscious of every detail of moving that car when you first got your learner's permit. But now you've been driving a long time. Guess what? You put the key in the ignition, have a conversation with somebody like Laura in the car. You get so involved in the conversation, you drive, and then you look out the window and you realize you haven't paid attention to the road for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the reality is why? Because now you're driving by habit. Once you teach it how to drive, it will learn that. It will do the driving the way you taught it. Okay? So you don't have to pay attention to anything that's in the subconscious. It does it automatically. So basically it says, make a habit. That does not mean putting a sticky note on the refrigerator, don't eat the donut. That's not a habit, that's a suggestion.
Right.
Yeah, you recognize a habit is a repetitive process that you do over and over and over again. Saying things is a way of doing it, as long as you do it on a repeated basis, so that it's not just some words that show up every now and then. A habit has almost like a religious character to it.
Okay.
Every day we do this.
Yeah.
Every day at 4 o'clock we do this. Okay? So basically, that's how you make the habit. Okay? So that is one way. The second way the subconscious mind learns, though, is by bypassing the conscious mind.
And how do you do that?
By bypassing the conscious mind, that means hypnosis.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, the child's brain, from birth through the first 6 years, the child's brain, the EEG activity, the brain function activity, is in theta as a primary brain state, which is a state of hypnosis. That's why we download so effectively programs in the first 6 years of our lives, because our brain is in a state of hypnosis. So it says a way of changing subconscious programs, hypnosis, or using something like tapes, subliminal tapes. It's another form of hypnosis. Okay? Any form of hypnosis is a way of bypassing consciousness and going straight into the subconscious program. And the last way, something relatively new, is called superlearning. And superlearning, you say, well, what's superlearning? I go, well, superlearning is characterized by those people that pick up a book and they turn the page and they move their finger down and they go like that, and they read everything on the page as fast as they did it. That's superlearning. Okay. If you engage in a superlearning process, which is really trying to generate harmony between your left and your right brain hemispheres, then you can download new beliefs like a superlearning process and change the subconscious in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, change beliefs you had your whole life. So why is this exciting? Because this is a new form of belief change. And it's a whole bunch of modalities affect this belief change, and it's called energy psychology. And most of them actually engage a superlearning process. Okay. So this is really necessary at a time like right now, because we're running out of time. And so we really need to make changes very fast and effectively right now. And so superlearning has come into our world. Necessity is the mother of invention. Yes. And we have a necessity to change fast. because we're facing evolutionary upheaval in the very imminent future.
So this has been so amazing and enlightening already. Are there any quick tips or any last minute other things you'd like to tell the audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm going to tell the audience something very special. Especially if they're old enough to have fallen in love a couple of times in their lives. This will be very helpful for a very simple reason, because I refer to something called the honeymoon effect. And I go back and I say, when you go back to that time you felt deeply head over heels in love with somebody, if you can put yourself back in that place, and I would ask you this, when you were back at that point and you were so full of love, were you healthy? And the answer for almost everybody, exuberantly healthy. I say, did you have energy? My God, we had so much energy, we made love for days without even stopping for food. I go, cool. And I said, was life so good you couldn't wait for the next day? And the answer is absolutely. Every day was so beautiful in that period called the honeymoon. And then I go, is it sort of like living heaven on earth? And the answer is, of course it was. It was everything you ever wanted, all coming to you. And then I have to tell people, this was not a coincidence. This was not an accident. This was a personal creation. And so basically I say you can create heaven on earth. You've already done it. Now the question is, how come it disappeared, and how did I do it? So the first thing, how did you do it? And here's what I've been talking about for several years, when science just came out with a paper on it in the last year, so I'm very excited about it, and it goes like this. When you're in love and you're experiencing love, the conscious mind doesn't travel. The conscious mind stays in the present moment. Very logically. Very logically.
So
why would I want to go somewhere else if it's so perfect here? So it says, when you're in the honeymoon, you're operating from your conscious mind, which is what? That's the one with your wishes and desires and what you want out of life. Right. So you're creating from all the wonderful things that you like. When does honeymoon end? When life gets busy. And it gets busy, and then your conscious mind starts to wander and start thinking about things. So what are you going to do next week? And what about the job? How are you going to fix the car? And when that moment happens, if your conscious mind's not here, then the default is the subconscious. So imagine you have this great relationship, and your partner, who has just been this loving relationship thing all the way up to this minute, comes up and asks you a very simple question, but your conscious mind is thinking about, let's say, paying the rent.
Right.
And your friend comes up, asks you a question, and you turn around and go, blah, 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 blah. And your partner looks at you in total surprise and says, who are you? Like this new person just showed up. And the person, that's actually true. What showed up? The subconscious programs, the habits. They didn't play up to now because the conscious was staying present. But the moment the subconscious shows up, why is it different? Because it's not you. It was programmed by your parents and your family and your community. So your behavior that you just expressed when your subconscious mind was playing is not even your behavior. Well, the honeymoon ends when? The honeymoon started and works when two conscious minds interacted with each other. And the honeymoon ends when two uninvited minds come in with different programs called the subconscious mind. And that's when the honeymoon fades. Now the question is, will the relationship last? That's only based now on whether you want to compromise on those new behaviors that showed up that weren't there in the relationship when you started. And the issue is how much of the new behavior that scares you or staggers you will you accept and stay in the relationship because the other stuff was good as well. And so the honeymoon disappears, and now the question of the relationship is in balance based on how much will you compromise and accept this other behavior, which will become the more predominant behavior because it's subconscious, and would you want to put up with that way of life? That's when the make or break point comes. And yet, in almost every case, even if you stay in the relationship, you've done so at a basis of compromise. And that sabotages the relationship.
Wow.
So basically, then you say, well, wait, you said you can reprogram the subconscious mind. Yes, I did say that.
Yes, let's do that instead.
Let me give you then an insight that makes it perfect. If you take the beliefs and wishes and aspirations of your conscious mind, the way you would like to have your life work, and program those into the subconscious programming, what would it mean? The answer is, you'd be on a honeymoon the rest of your life.
Who doesn't want that?
Well, I want to tell you, it's working for me. I've been 14 years on it, and it was an exercise, so it wasn't just like, oh, what a coincidence, but it was a knowing that when buttons started getting pushed, it's like, well, wait, that's subconscious responding, and then starting to say, well, look, let's just rewrite these things. and then rewriting the subconscious mind led to those beliefs. So what does it mean? When I'm not paying attention, I'm still the same lovable guy that I was before because I'm not paying my parents' behavior anymore.
Yeah, and our parents probably, they've learned it from
their parents, and who learned it from their parents.
Like
so that's why there's no blame. I can't blame anybody. It could have been 50 generations ago where all this started. What do I know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't my parents. They were, victimized by it as much as anybody else. So it basically says, drop all this stuff. Forget that past stuff. But starting now, you have power in your hands now. And in the moment of now, you can create. And if you fell in love and you had that experience, then you realize that you've done that. You could do that all the time.
Wow, this is just amazing. Thank you
It's
so much.
Thank you.
Well, I would love to help the audience know, how can they learn more about this? What do you recommend?
BruceLipton.com.
Okay.
It's a website, a lot of information freely downloadable at that website, articles and all kinds of other information, resources about how to go change the belief system. All these things are available. Take a look. Simple. BruceLipton.com.
And he has some wonderful books that I can attest to personally.
A couple nice books.
You're very modest. Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk to your wonderful friends.
Yes. Thanks for watching Healing Powers TV. If you want to find out more information, you can go to www.healingpowers.net. Thanks for watching.